Hi, and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. This week, we are talking all about your emotions and who creates them. Now, do you believe that other people are responsible for your emotional state or that you are? If you feel anxious, angry, or sad, or happy, excited, or contented, where do these emotions come from? And are they something that you have any control over? Well, in this episode, we'll be answering all these questions and sharing the Wu Wei Wisdom teaching on your emotions and how you can master them. Okay, David, so one of your main teachings is you are the creator of your emotions, not the victim of them. What does that mean?
Well, you're right. This is the fundamental teaching. I try my best to say this on every video because this is so important. A lot of my clients believe that the emotions that they generate, and they will call them intense, overwhelming, strong, they power their lives, but they become the victim of them. And they set up a life trying to avoid the emotions or trying to control the outside world to reduce their emotions. And they're always looking at the symptoms. The emotions are the symptoms of what you think and what you believe. So in this video, I really want to delve down in this, go through the golden thread, and to go to those core fundamental beliefs which were formed in your childhood.
And so why is it that most people believe that kind of emotions, their emotions are something certainly they experience very powerfully, but that somehow they have no control over them? Because are we taught that at school or by our parents? Where does that come from, that thinking?
No, and I think it's quite understandable how this thinking has been developed. So as we start to develop this, let me concentrate on our teaching. You are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have emotions. Quite the contrary. We're human beings. Our emotional state is what makes us so wonderful. We should be experiencing emotions, but don't fall into the trap of being the victim. But you see, in our society, if you, say, went to your local GP with anxiety, they wouldn't be asking you the questions that I'd be asking you. When clients come to me and they have strong, intense emotional feelings that are disturbing their life, we have to try and do the golden thread and see what is the belief or the thought that's creating the emotion. Mostly in our society, we try and deal with the emotion. In fact, when I went to university and got my degree, if you want, I'm paraphrasing, but I was taught to sit in front of a client and say, tell me how that makes you feel. Let's discuss your feelings. Now, once we can absolutely agree that you create your feelings, my questions are, what is the belief? What is the thought that creates that feeling? Let's go to the root of the problem. Let's not waste our time going round and around and around, because this is what used to happen, Alex. A client used to come when I first started, when I left university, my goodness, long time ago now, and you say, how does that make you feel? Well, they would just dump their emotions on you for an hour, walk out the office, and then a week later come back and dump the same emotions on you. Nothing was ever being solved because you were never getting to the root of the problem.
I think a lot of people would say, though, that, David, being able to express how they feel, so those emotions, is part of the therapy process. Would you agree? Or would you say it's just like the small starting point?
In my model, I would just say it's the starting point. The first thing that we talk about with my clients is, do you agree with that statement? You are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim of them. And they would normally say, well, intellectually, I understand. I understand emotions don't float around the room. And I understand somebody doesn't like arrow and emotion as into me. I understand that I create the emotion. And then they use that magic 3-letter word. Yes, David, I understand intellectually I create my emotions, but, and it's the but. It's the but, because if you don't agree intellectually, what else are you basing that decision on? And paradoxically, you're basing it on emotions. So you're grounding your life in your decision making in your emotions rather in what you think and what you believe. I call it the ABC model. First, look at A, what you think, what you believe. B, they create emotions. C, then you act. Most of my clients will be acting from their emotions, and I want to move them over to be reacting and acting from their beliefs and what they think.
It is kind of, when you're in the heat of the moment and you are experiencing intense emotions, uncomfortable emotions, it's kind of natural for all our attention to focus on those, because it's like a red flashing light and it's hard to pretend like they're not there. And it's also quite natural and understandable to want to get rid of those uncomfortable feelings as quick as possible. So would you say that's another reason why a lot of people don't want to deliberate on, what am I thinking? What am I believing here? It's kind of, would you say it's like human nature to want to focus on the pain point, the thing that's creating the pain, and wanting to get rid of it?
Well, I wouldn't go so far and agree with you. It's human nature. I think it's very familiar. Mm-hmm. I think it's what people get used to doing because they haven't been exposed to this teaching. So the emotions become the focal point, and then they just focusing as on emotions, and that normally results in excess, like eating too much, drinking too much, smoking too much, gambling too much, spending too much money, because what they're trying to do is to placate the emotion rather than looking at the mechanics of what creates the emotion. So you're absolutely right. It's very difficult to do this teaching in the heat of the moment. And that's why we do these videos, because this is something that you should consider, challenge, think about, because this is something you have to change, and we can understand where this came from, because this came from childhood, and you can understand that some of your beliefs have to be reevaluated and you have to change your focus. I call it grounding. Where are you grounding your life and your decision making from? I want you to ground it from what you believe and what you think, and I want those beliefs and thoughts to be true, honest, and have integrity. I call that Shen, that spirituality that we'll talk about a little bit later. But most people, when I first start working with them, they're not doing it from Shen, they're doing it from an emotional base. And now they're trying to use emotions to placate emotions, and that creates this circle of reasoning that they doesn't move on.
Yeah, I can see that. And before, David, we dig into the childhood stuff and like looking at what do we mean by the thoughts and beliefs, I just wanted to raise one point, because I know a lot of listeners will be saying, yeah, but there's a real problem here with what you're saying, because this issue of triggers, emotional triggers, a lot of people will say, if it wasn't how they treated me, if it wasn't what they said to me, if this hadn't happened to me in this situation, I wouldn't feel like this. They in a really strong, challenging, uncomfortable, unexpected situation where other people are involved and we believe they have triggered us, it's hard for people to accept that they've created that emotional state that they are then feeling.
Thank you, Alex. That's right. That's the number one question I get, and you use a correct word as well. And I think we've done a couple of videos on triggers. Perhaps you can put people to.
I'll put links in the show notes to those teachings.
So let's go back to the core of the teaching. I am not saying that you shouldn't have emotions. That's the last thing I'm saying. So if somebody does something that's out of character, that somebody does something that they've promised you one thing and they've done something else, it is quite natural and normal to be angry, upset, to blow your top. that's quite natural. That's a natural response. What I'm talking about then is not living your life from that response, not living your life from being overwhelmed, not living your life from anxiety, not living your life from fear, not living your life from being scared. So if you're constantly being triggered by other people's words and actions, then look, this is for you. Please, this is for you. Then look at your beliefs. Look at what you think. Look at your beliefs about reality, about other people. Look at your expectations. Look about what you think that other people should be doing and how they should be doing. That's all belief stuff. That's nothing to do with emotions. They create emotions. The result of your beliefs are the emotions. But if you're a person that's constantly being triggered by events, by reality, or by other people, this video is certainly for you.
So I'm assuming you're not saying that if we can get our understanding around our beliefs and our thoughts, that it will all of a sudden make any trigger situations go away, or it'll make us all of a sudden not be fazed at all if someone says something really disrespectful to us, or we hit like a really unexpected, heavy challenge in our life. It's not, everything's not going to be rosy all of a sudden.
No, absolutely not. But the difference is when you are grounded in Shen, your truth, honesty, and integrity, your response will be in your control. So it may be a response that you should be angry, you should be upset, you should be scared. That could be a normal response. But again, you wouldn't be living and grounding in that emotion because you're creating the emotion that's appropriate. And this is a very important word in the Taoist teaching, that you are creating an appropriate emotion to meet the situation. But the emotion isn't controlling you. You are not the victim of the emotion that you create. Think about it. Once you accept that you create the emotion, now you have power over the emotion. You cannot be a victim over an emotion that you are creating. You create an emotion that's appropriate to address the situation that you're in, the person that you're facing, the environment that you're in. It's the correct emotion, and you're in control of that because your beliefs are based in truth, honesty, and integrity.
And David, that teaching of appropriateness, that Taoist teaching that we mentioned so many times on other episodes, that is absolutely critical here, because I know a lot of people write into us and say, are you saying it's wrong to experience the emotion of grief when a loved one dies, or it's wrong to be fearful if we believe we are being emotionally threatened, or it's wrong to be angry if someone does something really disrespectful?
No, that's absolutely not what I'm saying, because that would not be you being natural. You're a natural being. Emotions are part of your nature, but they should be appropriate. And you've got to remember the emotions are always a consequence of what you think and what you believe. So you hit a situation, a person, something happens. How you interpret that, how you perceive that comes from your beliefs. The emotions aren't perceiving things. The emotions aren't looking at something and saying, I am now going to be angry. It's your beliefs that are doing that. So it's back to the A, B, C. What you think, what you believe, what the emotion that creates, and then the actions that you take. So somebody said to me, I don't understand this. Well, how about if we were walking in the jungle and we saw a lion? And I said, well, this is a great example. If you and I were walking in the jungle and we saw a lion, we would both be fearful and run a mile. But how about if we lived in a jungle? How about if we saw lions every day? How about if we'd been brought up with this pack of lions? How about if seeing a lion is as much as we saw a dog or something? We would know how to act appropriately around a lion. We wouldn't run away. And so you see, it's what you believe and what you perceive makes your reactions. So you and I would be running in as in the other direction. The inhabitants of this environment that's used to seeing a lions would probably just step to one side or go around the back. It wouldn't create the emotion that we would create.
Yeah, and that running away, David, that is what we all do, because when we, what we term the red light emotions, the uncomfortable, painful emotions, whether it's anxiety, anger, sadness, none of us want to sit in those emotions and hold those emotions either intensively or over an extended period of time. And so we end up focusing our life on running away from the emotions, doing everything we can, strategizing and manipulating and making bad choices, only with the kind of principal objective of avoiding experiencing them.
Exactly. And the truth is, if what Alex has described as you're listening to this, it never works. It has never worked, and it's never going to work as in the future. Until you go back to what is your belief and what are your thoughts of creating the emotions, then you will have the hand and the control that I want for you. I want you to be in control. I do not want you to be the victim. I do not want you to be always like walking on eggshells and worried about what other people thinking, planning ahead and trying to avoid, as Alex says, or always in the fight or flight. This is what a lot of people say. I'm always constantly on alert. I'm always in a fight or flight mode. That means you are the victim of your emotions. You're not controlling them. You're just reacting to the emotion.
Okay, so let's look at some definitions, David. Let's look at this a little bit deeper. So when we say emotions, we also mean emotional feelings. Because a lot of people say, well, what's the difference between emotional feelings? So emotions, emotional feelings, they're the kind of labels we give for positive emotions and negative emotions. So how is that different from thoughts and beliefs? And what's the difference between thoughts and beliefs?
Okay. So an emotion is a physiological effect that you have in your body. It could be different for most people. For most people, it's like butterflies in your chest, a tightness in your chest. It could be sweating. It could be pain in your stomach. It could be the stomach rolling over. It could be weak knees, sweaty palms. It could be your head buzzes. It could be that you get this feeling that it's like you've got to run away from it. You can't cope with it. It's this feeling, this intense feeling. Now, that's one of the first things I like to teach my clients. Try not to give those feelings a name, like anxiety, like fear, like scared, because what you're doing, you're labeling a feeling rather than just calling it a feeling. What I prefer you to try this at home, just call it a red light feeling. If it's a negative feeling, it's a red light feeling. If it's a positive feeling, as you said in the introduction, happiness, joy, bliss, this is also a feeling. This is a green light feeling. This is a positive feeling. Now, if you're constantly, and again, I'm not talking about a one-off, but if you're constantly living with red light feelings, there is something in your belief system that's not aligned. It's misaligned. You're interpreting the world. You're interpreting reality and people as in that reality in a way that's causing these red light feelings. I say one thing as well. A lot of my clients will say, when they've had a session, they'll come back and say, I'm going to challenge you now, David, because sometimes I wake up and I've got a red light feeling, or I call anxiousness. But that's because you went to bed with that belief already in action. And you probably had dreams about being chased or running away or people coming onto you. So all of the time, this belief is very deep and it's working away at you.
But what if a client says to you, I'm just an anxious person?
Well, now what they're saying is I'm a victim of my red light feelings. I'm a red light person, David. But you haven't looked at what creates the red lights.
Well, what if they say to you, it's just the way I am, and I think it's kind of genetic because my mother was also an anxious person.
That's the number one thing that they say. And I would say, have you ever considered that the beliefs you've learned from your mother, your father, your family, it's the beliefs that you're mirroring and copying, the way that she dealt with life, the way that she was always scared and frightened and looking for problems. Maybe you've not inherited the emotion. What you've inherited is the belief system. You've copied or mirrored your mother, your father, your grandmother, whoever is important in your life. You've seen how they've dealt with reality, and you've copied that as your belief system. Mm-hmm. And that really is where the work is done. That's such a great example, Alex, because that is really where the work is done. As I say in every video, what do you believe? Why do you believe it? It's the why is the turning point. And just to say, well, I believe it because, oh my goodness, I wish I had $1 for every client that said to me, I'm just like my mother. Well, of course you're just like your mother because you're just mirroring her belief system, or my father. You're mirroring. And here's the pendulum. I'll say one more thing. This is what happens. You either mirror exactly and you do the same type of things, or you swing in the opposite direction and you do the opposite. And I want you to be in Wu Wei, in the center. So you are accountable and responsible for what you believe.
So I can see, David, that these beliefs about how we perceive reality, perceive difficult situations, perceive difficult people, they can be passed from generation to generation, so from grandparents to parents to children, and then that becomes us as adults, because it's as natural, as you say, for a child to observe their parents and see how they deal with things. And I can see it's an opportunity to break this cycle, my goodness, to break it, not only for yourself, but for your children. And to show them a different way.
This is one of the most important things. You're not only doing it for you, you're breaking the link in the chain. And it's so important, first of all, for you, but for everybody that's following behind you, not only your children, but their children and the children after. This is where you can set a different example for your children, and they will then carry on and set an example. They won't even thank you for this. They won't even know you're doing it. But when they see you dealing with difficult, challenging, upsetting situations with a degree of flow, of calmness, of truth and honesty and integrity, they will watch. They see how this happens and they will be learning. I think there was a study done about what children learn. Perhaps you could Google it, and somebody come up with 72%, I think it was, of what children learn is not what you teach them. It's what they mimic, they copy, they look, and they just follow on. And if you don't believe me, if, as you say, you learn from your mother these belief systems, have a look at your grandmother and see if you can notice it coming down the line, because this is how we learn.
And do you think that some people, in a way, if they say, well, it's just the way I am, it's the way my mother was, it's just kind of part of my makeup, do you think that's, well, it's not taking the easy route out, because it means still living with the discomfort, still living with the patterns of behavior? Do you think it's because people don't know any better, or because they just don't want to? Because this is going to be hard work. This is hard work, isn't it? Really examining what are the stories we tell ourselves, the beliefs that we are running our life. It's not a breeze.
No, and the word you used, Alex, is a word I hear from my clients. They will say it's easier. The word is it's familiar. I am familiar with it. But some will say it's easier. It's easier to think this way. Or some will say it's comfortable. It's my comfort zone. Even though it's not working and they've invested time and money to speak to me, when we get down to the real beliefs, this belief is so, and they will use words. This is a typical word. Well, it's so entrenched. It's so, it's part of who I am, but it's a belief. And we change our beliefs, and we have changed our beliefs all the time. And all we have to do is isolate and find these very fundamental core beliefs that were probably learned in childhood. And around that pivotal age that I talk about in all the videos, 6 to 9 years old, that's when we start to notice how people are dealing with the reality in their lives. And it's just a belief. We're always changing our beliefs. And I know, and as you say, it's not easy. You don't just clip your fingers and change your beliefs. But you've got to understand that once you identify a belief that's not working, then you make the change. And when you get it wrong, you keep on reaffirming the belief that you think is Shen, truth, honesty, and integrity. That really is the key. What are you grounding? Don't ground in what somebody who wasn't coping with their own emotions. Don't ground in their beliefs. Ground in your beliefs.
So, David, can we run through some examples? If I am experiencing the red light emotion of anxiety, so it's a red light emotion. Physiologically, that may be experienced as a shortness of breath, a tightness in my chest, a tension in my shoulders, a headache, sweatiness, palpitations, feeling kind of low energy or a little bit shaky. So that's the emotional experience. That's the red light.
So we already know there's a misalignment in one of your beliefs.
Okay, so the next step on the golden thread process is to move from, and this is the therapy model that you work through with all of your clients in your one-to-one sessions.
Yes.
You move to question what is the thoughts, what are the immediate thoughts that you are thinking right now, which are generating these emotions. So we're not talking at the kind of core belief stage.
No,
we're just talking. Yet. So what would be typical thoughts in kind of everyday situations that individual might be experiencing?
So I do one that I did with a client just a couple of days ago. She said, I am always so, she used the word anxiety, and then she changed it to red light. I always have a red light when my boss comes around, or I have to go and see and take work into my boss. So next question, why? Then she said, because I believe I'm not good enough for the job. I believe he's going to be judgmental. I believe he's going to find me out. The next question, why do you believe he's going to find you out? Why do you believe he's not good enough? Then she said, well, because I believe I'm not good enough. Now we're talking to the inner child, because that's one of the three lies.
And that, because I believe I am not good enough, that's the core belief.
That's one of the three lies.
But we're at the belief level, though, aren't we? We're not talking about thoughts about the boss. Exactly. We're now talking about fundamental belief about ourselves.
That's a great point again, Alex. You see, the boss really has nothing to do with it. See, the boss is just what's happening in this moment. It could be the boss. It could be your boyfriend. It could be the next door neighbor. It could be the person you sit to in the train. It could be anybody. So that's not the problem. The problem is the belief. I'm not good enough.
Yeah. So the boss, the partner, the problem with finances, the problem with travel, whatever the kind of day-to-day problem is, that's what you're saying, David. That's like the stimulus. That's like the thing that's prodding at the soul within you. That is the core belief you have about yourself. So in this lady's example is that I'm not good enough.
Yes.
And it's just everyday situations, everyday people are just prodding at that soul.
Okay. So now when you get to one of the three lies, for those of you new, let me run through the three lies. Number one, I'm not good enough. That's normally the common one. Number two, I can't cope. And you could use different words, it's all too much for me or blah, blah, blah. But I use these. I'm not good enough. I can't cope. And I'm unlovable, maybe unworthy. So those are the three lies. When you get to one of those threes or a derivative of those three lies, you are now talking to your inner child. You are now talking to that part of the mind. And if you're unsure what I mean by the inner child, we've done tons of videos. It's a part of your mind. You may want to call it your ego or your subconscious mind. Some of my clients call it the devil sitting on their shoulder. But now you're talking to the inner child. And it's like a 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old child coming to you and saying, I'm not good enough. And then if you have that core belief, this is the key, Alex, everything you see through that lens. Again, whether it's a boss, whether it's your colleague, whether it's a next door neighbor, you're seeing through the lens that I'm not good enough and they're going to find me out.
Yeah, and I'm going to disappoint them.
Exactly.
I'm going to disappoint them. I'm going to let them down. I'm going to feel completely exposed because they're going to realize that all along I've been not good enough. I've been unlovable. I've not been worthy.
Exactly. Or I can't cope. They're going to find out. They're going to pull down the mask and they're going to find out that I've never been able to cope. I'm just a fraud. I mean, we've done many videos on the fraud syndrome, and all of this type of stuff. And these are the upper levels. But when you get down to the three lies, this is the inner child. So with this lady, and I've done it on many videos, I've done the process. So I say, okay, well, I've just met you. My belief is that's a judgmental statement. Could you please explain to me why I should believe you're not good enough?
So it's a judgmental statement about yourself.
About yourself.
Your client's making a very judgmental assumption about who she is as an individual.
I don't want to get too complicated because we're trying to do this and make it easy. But even the statement to me doesn't even make sense. Just think about that. If you say this to yourself, just write it down. I am not good enough. For what? For who? Who is the you that's not good enough? And how do you know you're not good enough? You see, it doesn't even make sense. The more you look into it, it's a crazy statement.
But David, a lot of people would say, I've made mistakes in the past. I've been judged in the past. I've let people down in the past. I've disappointed people in the past. People have left me in the past. So therefore, I know I'm not good enough. All the evidence is pointing to that conclusion.
And I would disagree, because when you've done the golden thread, you're going right down to childhood. So what you classed as evidence is consequences. Because if you believe, oh my goodness, this is so important, please listen to this. If you believe and been living your life that you're not good enough, what will be the consequence of that belief? Think about it. I believe in the law of attraction. What are you going to bring into your life? If you go around your daily life, meeting people, your work, your colleague, your friends, believing down deep inside of you that everything you perceive in reality and you're coming at it through the lens, I'm not good enough. The consequence won't be that it will work out fantastically. The consequence, you will prove your belief to be correct.
Yes, so you will make mistakes.
Exactly.
People will get annoyed with you. People will leave you.
Exactly. And also, let me just say on that. And also, when you do, now, please listen to this. When you do well, when you are successful, when you do things really well and get praise and get promotions, do you accept that? No, you forget all that.
Yeah.
Don't you? You know what I'm saying is true. You forget you cherry pick all the negative to confirm your ridiculous statement that I'm not good enough, or I can't cope, or I'm unlovable, or I'm unworthy. It's the same on all of those three lies. So all of your successes are easily kicked out the window because they don't match your belief. But those that do match your belief, my goodness, you hold on to those like grim death, because then you do the word that you said, Alex. Here's the evidence. It's not evidence. It's not evidence.
It's the outcome.
It's
the outcome of the belief.
It's a consequence. It's the consequence of your belief. Why don't you have a look at the core belief? That's your belief. This is another very important step in the golden thread. And when I'm working with a client, we can spend a good bit of time on this. Own the belief. Own it. If you believe you're not good enough, don't give me the consequences. Give me the evidence. Now, this lady, her evidence was, I'm not good enough because I could never please my father. When we got to the evidence, that was her evidence. I'm not good enough because I could never please my father. I could never meet his expectations. He never told me I wasn't good enough, but I could see that he was never happy with me. I could never make him happy. So the conclusion I came to is I'm not good enough.
And David, is it important as part of this process of unlocking this to go back, as this client's done, to something in childhood, which was the kind of origin, the first time that we believed we weren't good enough or weren't lovable or weren't worthy or we were a disappointment?
Thanks, Alex. That's a question we get asked a lot. So let me address that. It is not necessary to go down to the original first, I call it the first domino. Mm-hmm. But what you're going down to is what created that belief. So it could be a generality, like with this lady. Her father never once said to her, well, my daughter, I believe you're not good enough. He never uttered those words, never once. But that's what she gathered from his actions and the way that he dealt with her. So you've just got to go down to when you formulated that belief and why you formulated that belief. And that really is where the real work is done. That's the end. That's where you get to the golden thread and you do the real work. Because once you can, I love when the Americans say, sunlight is the best disinfectant. I love that saying. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Because now, rather than holding it and covering it up and keep it as like a dirty little secret that nobody knows, now we can talk about it. And we can talk about it quite openly. And we can discuss things. And we can say, okay, so this is what I said to her. I know he never said it, but let's pretend your father did say it and he believed you wasn't good enough. Does that make you not good enough? Are you giving your authority for your spirituality, for who you are as a human being, for your truth, honesty, and integrity? Are you passing it over to him? And that's why you can just start to open the perception. Now, it made her think. No, she could have said, yes, I believe that my father is the best judge of me. So some clients will say that. But here's the killer question. If you're saying that to yourself, well, this is what another client said to me. I thought it was a wonderful saying. I learned so much of my clients. She said, well, let me try and remember what exactly she said. She said, David, the people who are biologically programmed to love you, guide you, when they don't, it must be your fault, mustn't it? So I said, well, hang on a minute. Can you tell me now? When parents have difficulty in parenting you, then you're taking responsibility. And she said, well, I guess I am. So now I do the Shen challenge. I love this Shen challenge. So I said to her, imagine now you've got a niece or a nephew, let's say niece. Niece comes to you and says, Auntie Alex, oh dear, my mother and father, I can't please them. I try my best. I'm working really hard at school. But if I get 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10, my father goes ballistic. He says I'm lazy. He says I'm not good enough. He calls me all the names under the sun. He doesn't speak to me for a week. He sends me to Coventry. Now, you would say to your niece, well, darling, I've got to tell you, that's your fault because you're not good enough. You would never say that to a child, but you say it to yourself. There's the misalignment. When you say that lie, and that's why I call it the 3 lies, it's a lie. It's a lie. And you have built your life based on a lie.
Yeah. And David, this is the profound thing, because it's like that lie that we first told ourselves in childhood, for whatever reason, under whatever situations, that is having a cascading effect in probably every aspect of our adult lives. So this lady client, she may just be experiencing red light feelings when it comes to her work environment or a career, but chances are that core belief, that lie, I'm not good enough, will also be creating red light feelings for her in other very vital and important aspects of her adult life, such as her relationships, or with her kind of family, or with her friends. So it's not just career.
It's very
and
profound.
It's almost like a leap of imagination to see how these surface level red light emotions that I'm experiencing right now about my boss, about a specific work situation, has its origin in something, a dynamic I had with my father when I was 5 years old. It's profound when we make that connection.
It's so profound, because it's not only about the red light, it's about reaching your true potential and being in your flow.
Yeah.
Because when you have a belief such as I'm not good enough, you do exactly what I've explained. You cherry pick all the negatives to confirm your belief. All the good things that may have happened to you, could have happened to you, would happen to you. So this is when you hear clients, and I hear this a lot, I don't deserve. I don't deserve to be successful. I can't fail. I can't take the promotion because I might not get it wrong. I'm very worried about what other people think about me, David. I want to people please. Can you see all the videos? Look at all our archives. We talk about all of this in detail. But when you perfect this golden thread, you'll come back down to this period in your childhood between 6 years old and 9 years old. I'm not being precise, around that time. It could be 5, it could be 10, but it's around that 6 to 9 years old. In my experience, this is very important. This is when you develop the 3 lies. Now, the 3 lies have what I call the first domino effect. In my model, I call it the first domino. So what creates the 3 lies? What is it? What is what I call the vow? V-O-W, the vow. It's that important. Because the vow is the child says, when she can't please her father, her mother, when they're always criticizing them, maybe physically hitting them, abusing them in many ways. It could be a dysfunctional situation with their siblings, with their family. The child says the vow. And the vow will sound something like, there's something wrong with me. There's something missing in me. There's something there. And then from the vow, the 3 lies, and then it's the domino effect. Then everybody slightly does variations of that, because now the pendulum comes into effect. So some children can go, well, I'll show them, and they'll tough up, and they'll be difficult to deal with, and
angry.
And
so
angry.
They're not an anxious person, they believe they're an angry person.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And they believe that the world's against them, and they never get justice, and everything is unfair, and they can't trust anybody, and everybody's out to get them. But they're living on the extreme, so they're not in their flow. All the ones will go, oh, poor me, if it wasn't for this, oh, I can't cut, it's all too much for me, people don't understand, I'm sensitive, I'm vulnerable, oh, people have to look after me, they've got to speak in a certain way. But all of these are trying to manipulate rather than being as in your flow. And that's why this emotional teaching and this video, I think it's the core. I've been doing this job for 45 years. I can tell you, as you said, I agree with you. It's quite difficult to get to. But when you get it, and you start putting it into practice, you won't get it right the first week or month, but it'll get better and better and better. And then just think about it. If your inner child loves familiarity, which it does, make the proper teaching familiar, and then it just accepts it. It just accepts it. I create my emotions.
So the proper teaching is also here, not that I'm not good enough. The proper teaching is I am good enough. I am worthy. You know, I'm a unique, divine individual. I don't need to prove myself as in terms of who I am, the absolute essence and core of me. So if we can get to a place where we truly believe that, this lady truly believes that, rather than believing she's not good enough based on a dynamic with her parents, are you saying then that that will eliminate all red light feelings of anxiety as an adult? Does it kind of make that much of a difference? Or is it that clear cut?
You've said a couple of things there. So let's deal with the first thing you said. So I'm not good enough is a judgmental statement. We call it in our model CCJ, criticizing, comparing, and being judgmental. So you see, her father, in her case, was very judgmental of her and criticized her, and also compared her to a sister because her sister was very academic and she wasn't so academic. Her father was CCJing her. And then what does she do? She begins to CCJ herself.
Comparing, criticizing, being judgmental.
Absolutely. Right. So that's the first thing. She's only mimicked her father's behavior. She's doing it to herself. And then strangely enough, this client said to me these words. I thought this was so classic. She said, but I would never do it to my children. Think about that. She said, I would never treat my children. So she's quite happy to treat herself that way, but she wouldn't treat her children that way. That's bizarre. Then why is she treating herself that way? I just thought that was a bizarre. And I said, well, why wouldn't you treat your children? And why wouldn't you do CCJ with your children? She said, because it's totally wrong and it'll mess up her life. I said, well, why are you doing it to you then? Mm-hmm. Why are you going against your own truth, honesty, and integrity? So if your truth is this is wrong, then why don't you live by your truth? So to answer your second question, does this eliminate all red lights? No, it's not meant to. Red lights are natural. They are a natural response. But the difference is you will not be living your life constantly on the carousel of despair, always experiencing fight or flight, running away, hiding, always second guessing what they're going to do, what they're going to say, what do they think about me? Are they happy with me? How are they judging me? Always looking outside of yourself. And so the red light feelings will diminish and become appropriate. And then we're back to our word.
So if this lady finds herself in an unfamiliar or a challenging situation, which potentially has very negative consequences, it's appropriate to experience those red light feelings in some measure. Yes. But what you're saying is if she has a deeper understanding that she is good enough, that she can cope with whatever the outcome, she will try her best. She's then not on the back foot. And so then she will not experience the overwhelming level of red light emotional feelings. So in this case, kind of anxiety type feelings, because she has corrected her core belief to something which is far more truthful, more realistic, more grounded, more based on who she is and her spiritual essence.
Yes. So that's why I say, and we're going back to the opening statements, you are the creator of your emotions. You are not the victim. So she stops becoming a victim of the emotion and she creates the appropriate emotion to meet the circumstances. So she deals with the circumstances, not with the emotion. Most of my clients make their life so difficult for them because they're not dealing with the circumstances or the person.
Yeah.
And the other person doesn't even realize the rage and the intensity of the emotion that, I mean, can you imagine? As she described one thing when she took in a file, the boss had asked her to do some work, and she took in the file and she said, I had to go to the toilet. My stomach was that upset. And doing number two, I walked in, my face was red, my palms were sweaty, and I put it in. She said, I virtually run out of the office. And then I said, well, how did that project go? And he said, oh, it was fine. And I said, well, why don't you acknowledge that you did that really well? Oh, yeah, but, I'm going to do the next one wrong, aren't I? You see what I mean? Even when her boss come and said, well done, you did that project really well, she can't accept that because it doesn't meet her belief system. It's like water off a duck's back. But if that boss had walked in and said, oh, you've made a right mess of this, she would have gone to pieces.
So what you're saying is even a positive outcome, even a evidence to prove that her core belief about herself is wrong, is dismissed. And I think, David, a really fundamental point that I'd like to make here is that a lot of people who are obviously interested in our teachings are very aware people who are wanting to take self-responsibility for their lives and their mental and emotional state. But there's a lot of kind of teachings which dance around the surface level, so teach coping strategies to deal with the symptoms, the consequences, which are the red light feelings, meditation, breathing techniques, being more prepared, thinking things through. And that is taking self-responsibility, but it's not really getting to the heart of the problem if you're unable to get down and deal with and question and correct those core beliefs. Because otherwise you're just going to end up repeating, you end up constantly just dealing with the symptoms.
I think you've highlighted one of the biggest problems because there are so many mixed teachings. So you've mentioned a couple of things like meditation. So meditation done correctly can be very, very well, because I always think when I'm working with a client, whether it's an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours, for me, that's a meditation, because meditation is about focusing your mind. So when I'm working with a client, I am absolutely as in the meditation. I'm trying to encourage them to be in the meditation. So I think the key is, if you're listening to this and you're not accepting this, or this seems strange to you, just go along and think about it. As after you've listened to this video, just sit down with a piece of paper, and whatever emotion you're going to call it, whether it's fear, being scared, being anxious, just ask yourself, where does that originate from? How does it enter my body? How does it manifest in my chest, as you said, breath, sweaty palms, weak knees? What is it that creates that? Then go and look on Google, and you'll see that emotions are a physiological effect. So who is creating that physiological effect? So if you say, well, the way he looks at me made me feel, then you've got to explain how he or she, what did he send that emotion into your body? Did he twiddle around with you? How could he do it? He doesn't even know. I'm sure the client we talked about, I'm sure if you asked the boss, he wouldn't even know what's going on inside of her body. He's got no idea. He just wants a project done. And so it's about being accountable and taking responsibility. And this is, as I said earlier, when I'm working with clients, being accountable is one of the hardest pills they have to swallow. I call it a bitter pill, being accountable. Now, because when you're accountable, this is so important, Alex. You see, if you keep on blaming other people, you're not accountable. You are like a puppet dancing to their tune or you're eating crumbs off their table. But when you become accountable, your emotions are your responsibility. And that is a big breakthrough. Now they don't even know what's going on inside of your body, but you know. And that should be a place. And the life lesson here is you've got that inner child, and that inner child has a misalignment. She thinks, he thinks there's something wrong, there's something missing. There's nothing wrong with you, sweetheart. And you've got to bring those inner child in you together. So you have to work at one. Please create appropriate, normal, natural emotional feelings. I'm hoping that those feelings will be mainly green light feelings: flow, confidence, happiness, joy, and love for yourself and then for others.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. And we've got so many other teachings to share with you on this topic relating to the golden thread process that David uses with all his clients, related to triggers, and also related to working with and communicating with your inner child. And I will put links to some of those in the show notes. If you are interested in working one-to-one with David on any of the issues we've talked about today, David works with clients all over the world every week by Zoom video call, and I will also put a link in the show notes to learn more about David's sessions. And finally, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new teachings every week, and we would love to share your journey with you. Bye-bye.